To achieve good results for solid glass, you'll want to choose a different template in Mental Ray Arch and Design. The thin wall template is really only for window glazing. So for example, in this scene I've got a wine glass and I want it to both reflect and refract its environment. So let's take a look at this just by itself with just a white material on it. There it is. We've got just a standard white material. And I'll go ahead and make a new material for this. I'll call it glass solid. I'll convert that to an Arch and Design material type, and I'll choose a template. So you'll see here we've got, once again, transparent materials. And we have two to choose from here in this case, solid geometry or glass physical. Now solid geometry is not physically accurate, quote unquote, but it renders more quickly and it will usually give you good enough results. So if you really need something to be absolutely physically accurate, you can use a glass template. Let's take a look at the solid geometry template first. I'll turn on the background so we can see that it is both reflecting and refracting its environment. We scroll down into the parameters, you'll see that they're pretty much all the same as the thin-walled geometry template. But if we scroll down further and open up the advanced rendering options rollout, one of the things in here that you'll see is the option for either solid or thin-walled glass and translucency. So clearly we want to have the solid option enabled here. Alright, so I'll go ahead and assign that to my geometry. Open my rendered frame window back up again, and I just want to render a region here. I don't want to render the whole frame every time. Click render and see what we get. So that's pretty nice for just dropping a template in without doing any editing. So what can we do with this to play with it a little bit? Well, just like with the thin-walled option, we can play around with the color here to get different tints. And it's very, very sensitive. You want it to be almost completely white, otherwise the tint's going to completely sort of overtake the material. So now I've just increased that to almost completely white, and as you'll see, we're getting a cleaner result there. If I want it to be a crystal goblet, I might set the index of refraction to 1.7. It'll bend the light a little bit more. And it'll also pop a little bit more. It'll reflect the environment a little bit more. So that's the solid geometry option. Okay, so let's take a look now at the physical template. So I'll go back up and choose glass physical. And you note right off the bat, suddenly we're getting very strong effect here with the tinting of the glass. Go ahead and render that. So interestingly, this is just something that you'll note. You have a very strong look here, but it doesn't necessarily translate to a really strong look over here. So why is that happening? Well, let's scroll down here a little bit and notice that the transparency color here with the physical template is actually white. Okay, scrolling down a little bit further into the advanced rendering options, this is why it's looking so blue here and yet we're not getting much blue over here, is because of this parameter, the refraction max distance. So you can think of this as being sort of fog inside the glass, and this value here is a distance value that indicates at what distance in the thickness of this solid glass does it reach full intensity to this color. So that means that it has to be 2 feet 6 inches thick in order to be this color. So if we wanted to see a stronger tint effect on the glass here, then we would need to reduce the max distance. Maybe I'll set it to something like an inch. So now you'll see we're getting a little bit of tinting there. If I reduce it even further down to a very low value like 0.1 inches, then we'll start to see a much stronger effect on the tinting. You'll also notice that this color does not really correspond to the color that you see in your final rendering. So the rendering will tend to be a lot more saturated. Can bring this even more extreme. So don't judge by what you see in the sample slot. You'll have to judge by what you see in your actual final rendering. And unlike when you're working with the standard materials, you don't have to worry about the shadow color versus the glass color. That all happens sort of automatically for you, and you don't have to think about it. So there you go. That's how you get excellent results with solid and physical templates for glass in Arch and Design.